right, hey again. So I'm actually not walking this time, but I just recorded 2 of these and I'm just enjoying it so much. I wanted to keep going, and there are some videos of yours that are much longer that I've been wanting to do, just like this, sitting down for them, because I think my phone would probably die if I tried to do them while walking around. So yeah, I'm gonna do this. I am scrolling through your YouTube library right now, looking for something that catches my eye in this moment. This one looks good. How I've made hundreds of friends on Twitter. I'm gonna keep going and see if there's anything else that catches me right away. There's another one. We can always get better at making friends. Maybe, yeah, you know what? I do want to do those. So I'm just gonna do maybe I'll do both. Depends on how long these go. How I've made hundreds of friends on Twitter. This was posted 2 years ago. And just a heads up, I am going to make coffee while we do this, so there's probably going to be noise from that, but if you're listening to these, you've gotten used to various noises like cars and waves and people talking and dogs barking, so hopefully that's not a problem. Yeah, so let's just dive in.
So, I have a Trello board that I maintain with a list of content ideas, and I got people to upvote on the ideas that they think are worth following up on. And one of the most upvoted ideas is Twitter as a coffee shop for friendly nerds, or as a coffee shop of friendly nerds. And so I think what that prompt is suggesting to people is that I have a pretty unique perspective on how to use Twitter, and I enjoy my use of Twitter. And it's always kind of funny to me to see that lots of people think of Twitter as something frustrating, painful, a dumpster fire. And so I thought it might be useful to articulate my thoughts on how I use Twitter and why it's so good for me.
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to switch to a different speaker so that it's louder. Cool, I think.
So some backstory.
There we go.
As a child,
let me rewind.
We thought it might be useful to, dumpster fire. And so I thought it might be useful to articulate my thoughts on how I use Twitter and why it's so good for me. So some backstory. As a child, I loved libraries and books, and it just felt like all of these people are sharing their thoughts and ideas with me for free. Authors writing books, and it's just, I feel like fundamentally a library has this vibe of, intellectual stimulation, and every book is an act of optimism. It's even if it's a cynical book that presents a cynical point of view, it's optimistic to believe that those ideas are worth writing down and worth sharing with other people. And I think I have been radicalized from a very young age to just believe that ideas are worth stating and sharing with other people. And there's this kind of philosophy, I guess, of idea sharing that I just take for granted, and I kind of assume that everyone else would feel the same way. I used to think that, if I can just get everybody to go to the library and have that experience, then, everyone will be moved the same way that I was and feel compelled the same way that I was to want to participate. I sometimes describe libraries as lighthouses of human consciousness.
Alas, not everyone feels that way.
Hold on.
That
just reminds me. I had responded to somebody on Twitter recently who was like saying how much they love bookstores and how much stimulation that they find in bookstores. And I just made the joke that bookstores are like the nightclubs for highly sensitive people. So I know that a bookstore is not the same thing as a library, but I think it does apply. For a certain kind of person, a library or a bookstore is like, that's nightlife in a way.
So the optimism hit me deeply already. So we don't, even if we can't get everybody to enjoy libraries the way I do, I think there's a lot of benefit to be had from finding other people who feel similarly and connecting them with one another. Because a lot of people are in isolation. A lot of people are separate from each other, and we can reach out into the darkness and find each other. I know it sounds kind of dramatic, but it's true, and it's improved my quality of life dramatically just to approach my online presence with this kind of collaborative attitude. So when I discovered the internet, I was about maybe 7 years old. I was like, wow, this is an opportunity for me to participate in this hypertext library of knowledge, information sharing, right? I used to think that, to become a writer, to participate in the library, the human library, I would have to find a publisher, I would have to go through that elaborate process of gatekeeping to be a writer. And now with the internet, like, you can just publish anything you want for effectively free, and you can talk to effectively anybody. And the amazing thing about Twitter in particular, I find, and I guess this might be true for YouTube as well, but it struck me with Twitter especially, is that you can really reach out to anybody else in the world who also has a Twitter account. Like, if you know the handle, you can just add them. And it took me a while. So I've had a Twitter account for pretty long. I signed up for Twitter, I think, around 2007 or 2008. And just, around the same time, a little bit later than when I signed up for Facebook, I guess. And it's just, there's an app, you should sign up for it, try it out, see what it's like. Post about what you're doing, and you don't really have a lot of followers. And so some people reply to your tweets some people respond to your replies of their tweets. But at the time, I felt like, I tried it here and there, now and then, but it didn't really stick for me at the time. But I came back to it later on. I would be periodically tweeting from time to time when I feel like I want to say something, and if it's tweet length, then tweet it, and just maybe your friend will see it, right? But I think around 2010, 11, 12, I started tweeting more and more, and it's kind of...
Let me just get this out of the way, and I know I've said it in past. I might have said it in my first ever one of these, but it was you who brought me to Twitter. Well, I mean, it was a combination. It was you and Peter Lindbergh, pretty much. But yeah, I discovered you first, I think, and that's how I started checking out Twitter more and more. And then you were like one of the first people I followed on there. And I think this is a true story for many, many people, that it's easy to sign up for Twitter and like not really know where to start, but by having found you and the little universe that you've created, it was very easy to just feel like there were friends out there to be made and to talk to. So I don't want to be over dramatic, but I almost want to say that like the whole, the teapot thing, the whole in-group Twitter sphere, that so many of us hang out on, I almost want to say that it's like thanks to you. I don't know that that's that unfair, really.
Become its own thing. Around 2014, 2015, I found a bunch of friends and online on Twitter, and in 2015, 2016. So I was also tweeting for work. So I used to work at a local startup, a tech company that sells software. And I used to manage the company's Twitter account. And so while doing that, I would have conversations with lots of people all over the world. And I guess that kind of normalized for me the feeling of talking with strangers online, which I mean I was already doing on forums and stuff, but it normalized using Twitter that way for me. And yeah, so I guess I brought some of that back to my personal account in a sense. And yeah, so in the past couple of years or so, I now have 17,000 Twitter followers, which is, depending on your point of view, it's either a lot or, it's not mega celebrity, but it's enough that I have friends from major cities all over the world, and I can get replies to almost anything I say almost immediately.
And as I listen to this, you now have 37.1 thousand. So 20,000 more just in the last 2 years, which is pretty badass. Pretty amazing. Where did you go?
Which is amazing, right? I feel like to some degree I've almost solved loneliness for myself, like my specific class of loneliness, of feeling like I got nobody to talk to. I mean, I've always had friends, right, that you could text, but you don't want. I used to not want to impose on them, right? And there's something about Twitter that's very any tweet kind of, I think, invites engagement, and that I think is one of the great features / culture of Twitter. I mean, it has its dark side, right? Like people find that Twitter also is home to a lot of abuse and a lot of disagreeableness, right? And so I want to talk for a bit about kind of my Twitter strategy and how you can also benefit from it. So I've always kind of thought of it as find your people, So whatever it is that you care about, there are surely other people in the world who care about it, even if it's 0.001% of the world population, right? That's millions of people. And, if some subset of them are on Twitter, then you can find those people. And if their accounts are public, you can add them. And if you add those people who are in public and you say things that they like, and then they like you, and then you can become friends, right? I mean, isn't it? To me, this is super obvious, and I'm always surprised when people seem surprised by this. But I guess it's just something about the context that I grew up in or participated in. But yeah, so you can really, even now, even with 17,000 followers, I find myself thinking there are surely hundreds of wonderful people that are on Twitter that I don't know about, that I could be friends with, who I'm not friends with yet, and which is an exciting prospect for me. So how do you do it? How do you find your people?
I feel that way with even just 700.
Well, there are few ways you can approach starting, but I would say you got to figure out who your people are. You got to figure out kind of what your niche is, and you don't need. I tell people to think about their niche, but I myself was kind of averse to being specific about my niche. I guess now people will describe me as the curious, nerdy, friendly guy who's doing a lot of threads about trivia.
Oh shit, is this video from before you came up with friendly, ambitious nerd? Because you clearly don't have that catchphrase in your mind yet.
Occasionally, like social commentary and stuff like that, which is a pretty broad, pretty big tent. And I have a couple of alts, meaning other accounts that I don't have my name on it, that I just experiment with. And one of my alts in particular, I didn't tell anybody about it, and nobody in my personal life or nobody on my main knows what my alt is. And I have like a couple of thousand friends, Twitter friends there. And I grew that very deliberately and very intentionally without saying who I am. And that actually gave me a feeling of lightness, like a sense of I can do this, I can make friends around the world without people knowing who I am, like just solely based on the merit of my utterances. Right? And also this worked so well for me because I had a very specific niche in mind. I'm not going to say what it is because if I do, you can figure it out. And I kind of enjoy the anonymity of people not knowing who I am on that front, right? So, but the secret to that, right, and which also works on my main, and I've also done some consulting for other people who want to get in on this game, right? And the secret to that is finding a kind of crossroads, I would say. So a crossroads, cities are grow out of crossroads, right? Just two different roads that intersect. And so you can find two separate interests that you have that, it could be motorcycles and pizza, right? Or yoga and archaeology. I don't know, just two different interests that you have. And the fun thing is that now you have a reason to seek out people who are interested in one of those two things, and they will be pretty curious to understand how kind of what are the similarities and differences between your two separate interests, so you can follow. So if let's say you're doing motorcycles and pizza, right? You can search Twitter to find people who are talking about either motorcycles or pizza. You can follow those people and you can reply to their tweets. And if they like your replies, you can make friends. And then
I said this in a previous one, but this is what marketing is. Literally, it's like, hey, you guys, do you know those guys over there? Or like, I have these ideas, you have those ideas. Making that bridge. Yeah, I think it's so cool that you have a marketing background and you are also the sort of, I don't know, the center of the spokes of the wheel of this Twitter space. Because within this kind of loose Twitter community, there is so much bad taste, or not bad taste, but like discomfort with marketing, and yet the guy who kind of brings them all together is a marketer. So it just goes to say, like, marketers aren't any one way, they can be the way you are. Yeah, like, marketers aren't necessarily sleazy, greedy, aggressive. They can also be extremely friendly, extremely encouraging, and like not any of those other ways.
You build off from there. So, the thing that I'm kind of skimming over is okay, so you find people that you want to follow. And I suggest following people who are likely to reply, because it's pretty frustrating to follow kind of a huge accounts, whether it's corporate accounts or brands or just very famous people. If you follow those people, your replies are unlikely to be seen or be responded to, and I personally find that to be kind of a wasteful experience. It's like if I'm replying to a celebrity and they don't reply back to me, it's like, what am I doing?
I mean, that is purely parasocial and one-sided. Because then you can also have parasocial things like this, for example. Well, not really this, because this isn't even published yet, but but yeah, like, I followed you on Twitter. You didn't know who the fuck I was, and I totally did, and I followed you, and so there was very much a one-sided relationship. But like, over time, I don't know, I did some of the things that you're talking about in here, and reached out to you in various ways through tweets, or like developed relationships with other people who etc. And so we had a parasocial relationship, but like now we interact sometimes on Twitter, and there's a actual, like, a relationship, so we engage directly with each other now. So yeah, that obviously is like way more fun and encouraging, and otherwise, what the fuck's the point?
Parasocial relationship, right? Like I'm hallucinating my interaction with them. Whereas if you find people who have, like under 2,000 accounts, well, I have 17K, and if you follow me and you reply to one of my tweets, I will probably reply back. But I'm a little bit weird. I'm kind of um, a little bit obsessive about making friends, so I'm always replying to people. And even then, this will not be sustainable past a certain point. I think once I have, I don't know, 50K, 100K followers, it'll probably no longer be feasible to reply to everyone.
I mean, I don't know if you've talked about this in other videos, but how do you keep up with the volume of notifications that you must be getting? Even at this time, 2 years ago, when you had 17,000, I mean, yeah, like I have 700 something, and there are times when it feels hard to keep up with. So, yeah, like how the heck do you do that with 17, let alone 37,000?
Reply. But yeah, you can. I have lists of friends who are great people who are very nourishing, positive, supportive, and you can follow them. And if you play nice, they'll play nice back. Right. So okay, the thing I haven't spoken about yet is just what the good reply game looks like, and I would say that the general attitude of most people. So I don't know if it's true for most people, but the loudest people on the internet are the most disagreeable ones. So right, people who have issues with what other people are saying, people who complain about what other people are saying, people who when you say X, they say what about Y, right? And disagreeable people have their place and they perform a fairly important role, I guess. But it's very difficult to make friends when you're being uncharitably disagreeable with people that you don't even know.
You might say this, but I want to say, like, why though? Why are those people so loud, right? Because they don't just get ignored. Like, they oftentimes get a lot of attention. And what's that about? I'm reminded of a friend of mine, another marketer, copywriter friend, who told me one time about how in one of the Facebook groups he was in, which had a lot of people in it, like it was a very active community, and somebody like asked a question, and it got like a couple of responses, but not many at all. And then that same person came back later and asked the question in a different way, which was basically, instead of asking his question, they said like, I think the for I don't remember the exact details, so I'm making this up, but like I think that the person or the idea that this community revolves around is doesn't actually work, and then said, "Prove me wrong," which is very confrontational, right? And it's like saying to a bunch of people who are very much into a certain idea or very much into a certain person, being like, "I think you guys are dumb. I think you're wrong. I see no evidence of your worldview being true." And like that sets people off, and then you get a hell of a lot of responses. So in one sense, that's very effective, right? To be disagreeable. But the other question, in another sense, is like, do you want to be that way? Because then you're also going to get answers which are coming from people who are feeling defensive. So I don't know. It probably depends on what's your goal, and then often also like how do you engage with those people once they answer you? Like you can do it strategically and then have them answer you and then be kind and agreeable, and not just grumpy. But yeah, that's an open question, something I've wondered about a lot, and I don't know fully where I stand yet. But yeah, I started off by saying like, why does that happen? And I think I didn't really say that so much as just provide an example. Like, having somebody oppose us, or like attempt to undermine our sense of reality and what we believe in, creates a much stronger emotional reaction most of the time than simply having somebody say, I agree with you. Depends on the relationship you have with them, but yeah, I mean, that's what all copywriting is about, especially is like when you're writing headlines, or you're writing subject lines, or you're writing the first sentence of a tweet, right? It's all about, or at least if you're trying to be really very much like a copywriter about it, like eliciting emotion, because that's how you get attention. Emotion, how do I say this? Emotion draws attention, or attention follows emotion. So if you, this word can be tricky, but if you trigger somebody, you have their attention. And then the question is, what do you do with that attention? And you can do a lot of different things. And that's where marketing can be beautiful, and it can also be shitty. So that's that. Yeah, rant over.
Well, the kind of hack or the trick, right? The thing is to realize that in a world where people are so defensive and so used to dealing with disagreeable people, the trick to making friends is to be a supportive, nourishing presence, right? In improv, they say that you should say yes and, right? So you affirm what the other person is saying. Even if you're disagreeing with someone, it's very helpful to find something in what they're saying that you can agree with, so that they don't perceive you as an opponent, and even an opponent is kind of a loaded thing, but like, so that they don't see you as someone who's kind of going after them, but someone who's kind of being a bit playful and wanting to play with ideas.
Yeah, actually, I'll just jump in again because I have done a bunch of improv, and I mean, like phenomenologically, if you will, when you're in improv and it's going well and you're in the flow, your energy is very much forward. It's moving. You're almost like chasing after it. Like you're ahead of yourself. You don't know what's going to happen. But you're ahead of yourself in the sense that like you're operating beyond your ability to project into the future, right? You're not in your head planning things anymore. So all your energy is going forward and outward. And when something happens, like if somebody does a thing which is not like a yes and type of move, and it makes you defensive, your energy, I feel like that's the wrong word for it, but I'll use energy for now. Your energy just like digs its heels in, and like even moves in the opposite direction, right? Like, what is anger? Anger is the phenomenon in us when somebody is coming too close and crossing our boundaries, and we're like, no, fuck you, push away. And push away energy is the exact opposite of what you want in improv. Because in improv, it's all about pulling, like getting closer and closer and closer together in terms of emotion and awareness and energy with other people. And as soon as you say like, no, you're wrong, or if you communicate that in some way, even just non-verbally, it just stops people in their tracks, and they start pushing away intellectually and emotionally, and then shit falls apart. So that's what happens in improv, but that's what happens in every other part of life too, I think.
In a way that benefits them. And that is the thing. Like you know, and I used to be a more disagreeable.
Or like, imagine there's a stream or like a trickle of water down a slope. Yes, and is like helping them continue down towards gravity. Anything else is like putting your hand in front of the flow of water, and suddenly the water has to find, it backs up and it has to find a new route and direction, and it doesn't flow anymore. It will eventually obviously flow again, but like it stops. And as a metaphor for what happens energetically, if you will, in improv and in interactions, I think that is apt.
When I was younger, that is the thing. Like you know, and I used to be a more disagreeable person when I was younger. I used to, and if you look Benjamin Franklin up, he describes going through the same journey. Like when you're younger and you're smart, it's very easy to go after people for making mistakes and saying things imperfectly and pointing out, well, actually, what you just said here is wrong technically, because like it's easy to do that. It's easy to point out the failures and mistakes in other people's thinking, writing, whatever. And because there's so much of that all the time, nobody really appreciates it. Nobody really requires it. There's always more of it. It's free. It's abundant. What's precious is support and encouragement. And I'm not saying that you should be blindly, insincerely encouraging and supportive in ways that are not honest. I'm saying you should find honest ways to be supportive. And I'll link my thread about reply game in the comments. But yeah, so just this idea of
it's very hard to fake yes and energy in improv. So I just say that because you mentioned, doing it in an honest way, honest support. When you're really there with people, obviously this is different online, but like when you're really there with people, it's hard to be inauthentically supportive. People can see that.
Figure out the topics that you care about. Make that clear in your bio so that people who see your bio can make the decision to follow you back. Tweet about those things. So when someone's scrolling through your feed, they should see tweets that they will like to interact with. And you can even encourage this in your bio itself. You can describe yourself as friendly. You can say, comments welcome. Like all these things, they seem slightly cliche, but I do find and that it makes a difference. And when I've been helping other people kind of troubleshoot their bios to figure out how to get more followers, they do find that when they describe themselves as friendly, when they say, talk to me about A, B, and C, right? When you kind of give people permission to talk to you, they will. You know what? And like one of the reasons I wear rings, even or jewelry, and sometimes I paint my nails, sometimes I wear necklaces. I mean, I do it because I enjoy how it looks, and it's also fun to give people something they can point to and ask you about, and then that kind of starts conversations. Yeah, so you can do that. What else?
I might try to actually, just going off what you said, because my current bio just reads money and marketing through the lens of internal family systems. And I wonder how much of a difference it would make. And obviously this would be very hard to track. But I wonder how much of a difference it would make to say, talk to me about money, marketing, and internal family systems in my bio instead. I might experiment with it. I might not. We'll see.
So practice good reply game. And so I'm not saying be so there's this meme, right, of the reply guy, and you could and there's this sense of I got a reply guy, and what does that mean? That means it's usually gendered, it's usually women who have men in their mentions who are repeatedly kind of well, it's just talking about replies in general, and it could be they it doesn't specify what kind of replies the replies are, but there's the sense of this like my mentions pest. One of my friends once said I have a mentions pest, and yeah, so you don't want to be a pest. So you don't want to be replying to every single tweet of someone else unless you're super close friends and you know that you're into it. If you're trying to,
I've definitely done with this with people, and I think the people I've done it with are just kind enough that they don't. I don't know. They're not annoyed with it, or they don't say they are.
To get on someone's radar and potentially become friends, but they don't know you yet, I think a fairly decent reply ratio is like, you shouldn't be replying every single day, maybe like every other day or every third day maybe, and maybe like 1 in 7 tweets or something. Not necessarily scroll.
Also, to be a little meta here, like what I'm doing right now is maybe like the epitome of being a reply guy, but whatever.
Every 7th tweet, but so I have acquaintances that I like, and I could potentially reply to every single one of their tweets on my time that appears on my timeline, but I choose not to because I don't want them to feel like I'm coming on too strongly to them, because then they might have to worry that, oh, is this guy weird? Is this guy obsessive? At this point, I've been doing this for so long that I kind of have a brand, and people
honestly, now that you're saying that, I'm like getting all, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm a weirdo. And yeah, in some ways I am a weirdo. So, be that as it may, I'm having a good time with it. Hopefully my little mini attack of shame and embarrassment is not going to ruin the rest of this.
To expect from me, and people kind of, Visa is very prolific on Twitter, it tweets a lot, and I have people who follow me and then subsequently unfollow me because they find that I tweet too much, but because we have so many mutual friends, they're going to end up seeing my tweets anyway when their friends retweet me, which is fine. I'm not here to make people follow me or get a very high follower count. I'm here to make friends, right, and to be in people's minds in a good way, like so that I'm building social capital, right? And I mean that can sound a bit manipulative or Machiavellian or whatever he's gonna call it, but I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything yet. I just want friends. I want a good time. I want a broad network. I want to be able to go anywhere.
The little evil salesman inside of you has just shown itself. Peered through the cracks. I'm joking.
Received warmly by people who care about me, and I think that's possible, and I think the way I'm doing it is a very nourishing and positive way to do it, and I think it's very easy to learn. I mean, okay, it seems easy to learn to me. Well, I went through some trial and error trying to figure it out, and I made some mistakes along the way and stuff like that. But looking back, the path is actually simpler than anybody ever conveyed to me. So I'm trying to practice talking about it and conveying it to other people. And I mean, I will have more clarity on how easy or difficult this is to learn based on how many people try it out and give me feedback on what their experiences are like. But already I've seen, there's like a couple of hundred people who are kind of in my radar, in my sphere, who didn't used to tweet much or didn't know how to tweet with other people, and they've kind of found each other, and there's this beautiful thing that's happening. Like people are making friends with each other, and they're like connecting with each other, and there's just this very wholesome vibe that's growing. And I want to teach other people how to do it. And even if we don't get into the specifics, simply knowing that this is possible, and that, if you're not on Twitter and you want to try Twitter, hit me up. I can introduce you to other people that you can talk with who will be nice to you and kind to you. And, we can get this very cool, friendly, loose community of international nerds who are sharing their interests and being supportive to each other in the comments and nerding out about stuff and not being uncharitably disagreeable with each other. And
that is literally why being on Twitter for so many of us is not hellish in the way that it is for seemingly the vast majority of people.
in my little way, I feel like this is how I'm trying to make the world a better place. I do want to expand this in every direction in a lot of other ways, right? But I feel like the at atomic level, at the most base level, it's really just individuals um, treating each other with good faith and respect, and kind of inviting each other to be playful. And yeah, you don't need to comment on every single bit of current affairs, right? So I find that Twitter is not a great place for discussing politics. You can try, and but I generally don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing. It's a great place to you can at any point in time nerd out about anything that you're interested in. You know, you can nerd out about video games, you can nerd out about what's on the street, you can nerd out about what you saw, and just share observations. I think some people feel like they need permission to do that, so I give you permission. You can be a nerd online, right? And tweet me if you want to share something. You know, you can. Feel free to use me as an excuse. Feel free to tweet and at me and say, Visa asked me to share my nerdiest thoughts, and I will retweet it, and it'll be seen by my nerdy friends, and you can do this friendly nerd network together. And you know, if you want to go big and grand about it, I do. You know, Margaret Mead has a quote which is like, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Like a loose network of nerds around the world, I feel if we all have friendships that tie us to each other, we become a lot more interdependent, and we care more. We learn to care more about other people in other parts of the world. So I'll give you an example. You know, like I'm Singaporean, so I live in Southeast Asia, and I've never really had to care about the greater world outside of it. But now I have friends in South Africa, in Namibia, in Honduras, in India, and I find myself now concerned about things that are happening, you know, in those parts of the world because they affect my friends. And I find that this makes me feel more in tune with the world. It makes me feel more in touch with reality. It makes me feel more connected. There is a slight con to it, which is that, you know, you get a bit more worried and anxious about certain things. But
There's this classic bumper sticker catchphrase, which is very much associated with like environmentalists and hippies, which is kind of where I come from. But it's think globally, act locally, and I think that phrase precedes the internet, so it's kind of interesting to think about with what you just said and with what is possible through Twitter, what it means to act locally and what it means to think globally.
in general, I think being connected is superior to being lonely and isolated. And I was a pretty lonely and isolated child, and I want to help people be less lonely and isolated. And I want to help introduce people to friends. And I think it's devastating that loneliness is such an epidemic in the most connected age of our time. And you know, I don't trust the apps to solve it by themselves. It takes people to solve people problems, right? And you have to find each other and talk to each other and build relationships.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm doing, and I invite you to do the same.
Done. Sweet. I mean, that's what you ended with, that it takes people to solve people problems, that you can't rely on the apps. It's like, it seems simple, but it's so fucking profound. Like, obviously Twitter is a tool, is a tech tool that enables the kinds of relationships that you've been talking about this whole time. But at the same time, it also enables all the fucking kinds of relationships and communication that make everyone think that Twitter is a hell site, right? So it's not the tech that makes it so. It's the people using it and how they relate to each other. So yeah, it really comes down to people. The tech doesn't really make the difference. Tinder, same thing, whatever, like any of these social networking apps. They maybe, you know, they're designed in particular ways to facilitate certain things, but ultimately it comes down to who's on them and how you are on them and how you are, just how you are. So yeah, I just think that that's the most profound and like beautiful statement that you ended with, you know. It takes people to solve people problems. And I feel like largely I'm not that interested in tech because it just, to me, it's like, it doesn't work on the problems that I think are really important, which are people problems. Obviously they can help, but it's easy to get caught up in the tech side of it and forget that, oh no, ultimately this is about people. You know, and you can create the coolest app ever, but if you forget about the people involved, then what did you really do? So that was fun. I really just want to stick to riffing with these, so if nothing comes to mind in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to end it. And nothing more is coming to mind right now, so I'm just going to go, done. See you next time.